In the middle of the sad and heavy feeling of Rob Reiner's funeral, when everything seemed set up to go through in a calm and orderly way, Sally Struthers suddenly showed up, letting out the deepest secrets from her heart. Things she could never say while Rob was still alive. Sally said she had loved Rob since the days of All in the Family in a quiet and real way, so deeply that she never asked for her feelings to be loved back. But everything changed when Rob married Michelle. The phone calls stopped, the closeness went away, and Rob became distant and cold, like a totally different person. The last time they met, Rob had said something she would never forget. "I'm slowly dying inside this house. I'm afraid my son will become a monster." Even so, Sally never blamed Rob. Over the many years that went by, even after Rob had left this world, Sally kept loving him just like she did at the start. Only now, it was a love that had made it through everything painful, but never went out. After Rob and Michelle passed away, Jake and Romy almost lost track of day and night. The house in Brentwood, already quiet, now felt even more empty. Every corner seemed to hold the leftover breath of their parents. They decided to have a funeral, without any fancy show, just serious enough to say goodbye to two people who had lived quietly but deeply. Jake handled the plans while Romy was almost totally worn out, crying as she wrote the guest list, her tears dropping onto familiar names, as if each letter hurt like a new cut. The funeral happened at the small chapel at the end of the street where Rob used to stop every morning. Jake only invited people who were really close, a few old friends who had shared coffee with Rob and Michelle for decades, the neighbor who helped him fix the roof during a storm, and a few distant relatives they hadn't seen in years, but who still held his memory in their hearts. Romy hesitated a long time before calling each person, her voice shaking as she said, "Rob and Michelle, my parents are gone. If you can come to see them off one last time." On the day of the funeral, the sky was lead gray. No rain fell, but the air felt heavy, like it could break any second. Two dark wooden coffins were placed in the center of the chapel, covered in white and pale purple flowers, colors Rob had once called beautiful in a sad way. The ceremony started in almost total silence. The organ played slowly, each note stretching out like a last breath that hadn't fully gone yet. Jake bowed his head, his hands clasped tight, his teeth clenched to keep from falling apart. When the person leading the service read Rob's name, his voice was steady, yet every syllable seemed to push hard on the chests of everyone sitting there. When it was time to speak, Jake stepped forward, his legs feeling heavy like lead. He stood there a long time before getting out his first sentence. Rob was not a man of many words, but he taught us how to live through his silence. His voice cracked, his eyes got red. In the seats below, Romy could no longer hold it together. She burst into loud sobs, her hand over her mouth, but unable to stop the broken gasps. However, what made the whole ceremony pause, almost like it couldn't breathe, came from a moment nobody saw coming. Sally walked into the chapel. In just a few quick seconds, all eyes turned to her, as if everyone felt this uninvited person brought a story that had never been told. Sally Struthers appeared like a crack in a ceremony that had been serious and closed tight. Just as the organ finished a long-held note, the heavy wooden door at the back of the chapel slowly opened, making a dry, sharp sound that made several people turn around in surprise. No one expected any more guests. The list had been closed, the memory set, so grief could go on in an orderly way. And there she stood, thinner than people remembered, dressed in black, her face pale with feeling. A soft wave of whispers went through the seats. Some recognized her right away. Others needed a few seconds to believe it. Romy froze, her hand on her lap, suddenly gripping tight, while Jake frowned clearly, not sure what was going on. Sally looked at no one. She lowered her head and walked slowly down the center aisle of the chapel, as if each step pulled along a piece of an old, painful past. As she passed Jake and Romy, Sally stopped for a moment. Her voice was very soft, almost fading into the air. "I know I wasn't invited, but I couldn't not come." Romy did not answer, only looked at Sally with a face both confused and heavy, as if trying to decide if she should feel angry, sorry, or just helpless. Sally sat down in the very last row alone, her hands clasped together. Her shoulders shook a little, even as she tried to stay quiet. When the person leading the service kept reading the goodbye words, Sally bowed her head lower than anyone else, tears falling onto the backs of her hands without wiping them away. To her, Rob was not just a name said in ceremony. He was a memory, a part of her life that had drifted far, yet never really gone. When it came time for the moment of silence, Sally suddenly stood up. Once again, the whole chapel stirred. She took a deep breath, her voice shaking but clear. "I'm sorry for interrupting. I just want to say a few words." Sally Struthers stood in front of the wooden stand for a long time before she spoke, as if just saying the words out loud might make everything break. She looked down at the coffins, her eyes red but dry, her voice low and unsteady. "We first met in 1970, Sally said, when Norman Lear cast me as Gloria and Rob had already been chosen to play Michael Meathead Stivic. The first time I walked into the script reading room, I saw him sitting there, with long hair, a bright smile, and smart eyes. I was young, just in my early 20s, while Rob already had the confidence of someone who knew he was going to do something big. She said the early days of filming were messy and tiring, but Rob was always the one who made things lighter. He liked to tell silly jokes, sometimes on purpose, to bug people. Sally smiled a little, the smile crooked with tears. But Rob was also the one who would turn to me when I was nervous and say, "Hey, it's okay. We're all in the same boat." To her, that closeness happened naturally, without ever needing a name. Sally admitted that they talked about way more than just the script. Between takes, they would sit on the steps behind the set, sharing cold coffee and bits of everyday life stories. "Rob listened," she said, her voice catching. "He really listened, as if everything I said mattered." That was what made her feel safe, and also what let her heart go too far. Over the 8 seasons, Sally and Rob got so close that they were always together on set. They practiced lines together, laughed together, and worked together to fix the script so the audience would laugh more. Sally remembered one time when Rob pulled her aside and said, "Sally, if you can put the success of the whole series above your own part, you'll never be sad about losing a few lines." That advice, Sally said, shaped her career forever. She paused for a moment, took a deep breath, and then said something she had never said out loud in public all those years. "I liked him very much," she said softly, her voice a bit choked. "I sent him candy before every live show. We went out to dinner together and laughed late into the night. Once Rob told me that Penny Marshall, his wife at the time, was a little jealous because I kept laughing with him, kept hugging him. Rob laughed and said, 'Penny thinks you and I have something going on.' I just laughed it off, because no matter how much I liked him, I knew it was only a quiet, unspoken feeling." Sally said there were days when she on purpose got to the studio early, just to see Rob walk in, his jacket loose over his shoulders, that familiar smile on his face. He once asked me, "Why are you so quiet today?" And I answered, "It's nothing." She let out a soft laugh and shook her head. The truth was, there was a lot. I just didn't dare say it. Over time, the feelings inside Sally quietly changed. That secret young crush, with no place and no name, slowly got put away, making room for a different kind of connection. More steady, less painful, more like brother and sister than wanting. Sally learned how to stand next to Rob without expecting anything. How to smile when he was happy in his own way. It wasn't giving up, but a quiet kind of growing up, where the heart knows when to step back so nobody gets hurt, including itself. When she talked about the filming in later years, Sally always remembered Penny with a sad but kind smile. Penny often brought sandwiches and coffee to the set, going around to everyone, checking on them like the cast and crew were her little family. It was that simple warmth that made Sally see Rob had picked the right person to go through life with. And for that reason, Sally always had deep liking and respect for Penny in her heart, not as a rival, but as a kind woman who was in the right place at the right time, with full honesty. After All in the Family ended in 1979, Sally thought everything would slowly fade into quiet, like so many shows. But Rob didn't vanish. He called her a lot, calls that came out of nowhere, as if he had never left her life. No hello, no small talk, just Rob's voice, jumping right into a dumb joke, sometimes totally random before hanging up before Sally could even answer. She would always freeze for a few seconds, then laugh out loud in the empty room. A laugh that felt good and hurting at the same time. Sometimes Rob didn't hang up fast. He talked about new work, about stress, about feeling lost without the old filming schedule. "I miss that feeling of everyone together under the lights," Rob once said over the phone. Sally listened without cutting in, only saying soft things sometimes. "I understand." Those calls weren't long, but they were enough to make her feel she was still in his world, even if just on the edge. Sally kept the habit of waiting for the phone to ring late at night. Every time she heard Rob's voice, it felt like time went backward. "Hey, Gloria, if you had a bad day today, just remember I've just told the worst joke ever," he once said, his laugh mixing with the phone static. Sally answered with her own long laugh, happy and sad together, like a thin string, tying her to her young days that were already gone. Everything really changed only when Rob met Michelle Singer and married her in 1989. After marrying Michelle and having 3 kids, Rob's world closed in a whole new way. His new family filled every empty minute of the day, every breath at night. The quiet evenings, once for phone calls and laughs, were now full of kid cries, busy plans, and a tiredness that never went away. Rob stopped calling Sally, not because he didn't want to, but because there was no space left for wanting. In the new house, everything had quiet rules. Michelle was very sensitive, her jealousy like a tight air over everything. Just saying Sally's name could change the mood. "I don't like you bringing her up," Michelle once said, her voice cold and sharp. Rob stayed quiet, didn't argue, only nodded a little. The nod of someone too tired to explain. He started holding back. Old memories got locked up. Past ties cut not by words, but by long quiet. Once Rob picked up the phone, almost dialed Sally's number, then erased it. He sighed and said to himself, "It's just a call, but maybe I shouldn't." And so another night went quiet. The 3 kids brought happiness, but they also wore Rob out in ways he never expected. He loved them until he was drained. Sleepless nights, grumpy mornings. The constant feeling of not being enough slowly broke him down. Rob got quieter, smiled less, his eyes always looking at something far off. There were times when, after the kids slept, Rob sat alone in the dark living room, staring at his blank phone screen. He missed how Sally used to laugh loud at his stupid jokes. He missed feeling like himself. Not a husband, not a dad, not the one holding it all up. Just Rob. "I miss you," he whispered into the empty room, knowing nobody heard. The distance didn't come sudden, but like fog getting thicker day by day. Sally slowly became a name never said, a memory put in the deepest drawer. Rob didn't hate her, didn't deny her. He just made himself forget, because that was the only way to keep going in the now. On one rare time, Michelle asked, "Are you still in touch with her?" Rob shook his head. "No," he said calmly. It was the truth, but a truth that hurt bad. Michelle turned away happy, while Rob fell quiet, like he lost another bit of himself. As years went on, Rob became different to the world. Successful, busy, responsible. But inside, he got more empty. Old friendships didn't end from betrayal, but because there wasn't strength left to keep them. He learned to live with that missing feeling, like a dull pain that never healed. The last time Rob Reiner called Sally was on a very late night, his voice low and hoarse, as if all his energy was gone. No usual joke to start, only long quiet before he breathed out and said, "I'm so tired, Sally." In that voice, she heard not just body tired, but the worn out of someone holding it together too long without help. Rob talked about the kids, about trying to be patient, trying to love them the best he could. He said he always gave in to them, always tried to calm things, but sometimes everything got out of control. Nick especially got angry fast, feelings exploding sudden, sometimes leading to fights that scared Rob. "I just want to protect them," Rob said very softly, like explaining to himself. He admitted there were times he should have gotten outside help, but he didn't. "I can't," Rob whispered, "calling someone to come and take my child away. I can't stand that idea." In his voice was a blind, hurting kind of love. A love ready to take all the bad, so his kids wouldn't get another hurt. Sally didn't cut in. She only listened. She could feel Rob slowly fading into his roles as dad, husband, and the one in charge of everything. He didn't talk about himself anymore. Didn't ask about her. She put the phone down very slowly. Didn't cry. Only sat there a long time in the quiet room. Later, life pulled them different ways, and their closeness slowly faded. "We didn't fight. We didn't break up," Sally said, her voice full of sadness. "We just quietly drifted apart." She turned to Jake and Romy, her look softening. "Rob was a good man, not perfect, but real. And whether you know it or not, he used to talk about you with a very quiet pride." Romy lowered her head, tears falling without sound. Jake tightened his fist, his jaw clenching. She turned back to the coffins. "Goodbye, Rob. Thank you for believing in me, even when I no longer believed in myself." No one stopped her, maybe because everyone could tell the pain in her voice was real, plain, not asking for pardon. Jake turned a bit to Romy and whispered, "He used to mention Sally." Romy nodded a little, her throat tight as if all the pieces suddenly fit in the most hurting way. When the ceremony ended, Sally was the first to go. She didn't wait for anyone, didn't look back. The door closed behind her, leaving a strange, empty feeling, not loud, not big, but hurting. That uninvited showing up had stirred old things thought buried, reminding everyone that some ties, even when not in daily life anymore, still come back at the saddest times. Jake was the one who threw the first handful of dirt into the grave. The sound of earth hitting wood was a dull thump, like a door closing that he could never open again. He turned to Romy and said softly, almost no sound, "We did everything we could." Romy nodded, but the empty in her eye showed she didn't really believe it. As people slowly left, only Jake and Romy stayed standing by the new grave. On the simple headstone were Rob's name and 2 short dates. No more tears now, only tiredness and a lasting hurt. The funeral was over, But for them, Rob's leaving was just starting to really hit. A hurt that didn't bleed, but ate for the rest of their lives. So, what in the end was the relationship between Sally and Rob? Were they just coworkers, friends, or something more unclear that neither ever dared to name? How close must they have been that a phone call without hello was enough to make Sally laugh out loud in an empty room, and that Rob could tell her the deepest tiredness of his life? Sally Struthers was born on July 28, 1947, in Portland, Oregon, into a family that was far from happy. Her father, Surgeon Robert Alden Struthers, left when she was only 9 or 10 years old. She grew up with her mother, Margaret Caroline Joris, and her sister, Sue, in the quiet Concordia neighborhood in northeast Portland. Her mother worked hard at the Bonneville Power Administration to support her kids, while also fighting bad depression. Sally once said, "My childhood wasn't as perfect as people think. I remember days when my mother would sit quietly in a corner of the house, and all I knew to do was hold her without saying a word." Her mother worked long hours, tired and emotionally shut off, while Sally grew up feeling she always had to prove she was worth something. At school, she wasn't a kid who stood out for looks, but she had a special energy when in front of people. A drama teacher once told her, "You don't just act, you live inside the role." That stuck with Sally for a long time. After high school, Sally decided to leave Portland for Los Angeles, a choice that was bold and had to happen. She took very little stuff, but in her heart was a strong wish to be seen, to be noticed. In those early years, struggling with small parts and one failed try after another, Sally sometimes sat alone in her tiny rented room, wondering if she was chasing the wrong thing. "If I quit now," she whispered to herself, "what will I have left?" Sally's career started with small roles in the late 1960s. She danced on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour and appeared short in 5 easy pieces. It was there that producer Norman Lear saw her and asked her to try out for Gloria in All in the Family in 1970. That role changed everything. Sally clearly remembered the first script reading. "I walked into the room and saw Carol O'Connor, Gene Stapleton, and Rob Reiner. I was shaking so bad I almost dropped the script. But when I read lines with Rob, everything suddenly felt natural in the weirdest way." Through the first 8 seasons of All in the Family, Sally and Rob became close friends on set. They often practiced lines together, fixed the script, and shared happy moments after each take. Sally Struthers once said, "Rob was a genius. He always knew exactly how to make the audience laugh at the right time. I learned so much from him." That closeness made them feel like brother and sister, but it also accidentally caused some mix-ups. Rob Reiner's first wife then was actress Penny Marshall, who had also tried out for Gloria, but didn't get it. Penny sometimes felt uneasy, seeing how close Sally and Rob were. Rob once told it funny to Sally. "Penny told me that you're always laughing with me, always hugging me, so she thinks you might be up to something." Sally Struthers said clearly that there was never any romantic thing or wrong relationship between them. Only work, friendship, and respect for each other. After the series ended its main run in 1979, Sally and Rob kept in touch for a while. Rob sometimes called to check in and talk about new work. While Sally always showed her pride in his growing talent as a director, she once said, "I was so proud to see Rob move into directing and do so great. He deserved every bit of it." Over time, though, personal lives, family duties, and hard careers made their contact less, until it stopped completely without any clear reason. Sally Struthers admitted she never really got why the friendship faded like that, but she accepted it as part of life. In 2003, when they ran into each other at an event, Sally excitedly ran over to hug Rob like old times. This time, though, Rob kept distance, gave only a polite hello, and walked away fast. maybe to not make his second wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, feel bad. As for Sally herself, after All in the Family, success came fast and big. 2 Emmy Awards proved her talent, but they also brought huge pressure. She kept working hard after, in TV, movies, stage shows, voice work for cartoons. She was everywhere, yet the spotlight didn't shine as bright as before. There were times when Sally stood backstage at a Broadway show, hearing applause for someone else, and felt like she was slowly moving away from the middle. "Maybe fame has an end date," she said with a sad smile to friends. Sally Struthers has always kept her private life very private, even with big fame from playing Gloria in All in the Family. She married only once, to psychiatrist William C. Rader on December 18, 1977, in Los Angeles. They met through the wife of Carol O'Connor, who Sally saw as a second dad after her real father left when she was young. In a rare interview, Sally once said, "After our first date, I fell madly in love. I was the one who proposed to him." That marriage gave Sally the biggest joy of her life, the birth of her only daughter, Samantha Struthers Rader, around 1980. At first, Sally hadn't planned to be a mom. She once shared, "I thought I would never have kids because I was afraid I wasn't patient enough. But then Samantha came and everything changed totally. She is the light of my life." William had 3 kids from before, Jonathan, Nathan, and Deborah. The family was once seen happy together at events. William was very supportive of Sally's work, and even co-wrote an episode of All in the Family. Sally described the early marriage years as very beautiful. "He was confident enough not to feel threatened by my income. We respected each other's space, and that was the best." However, less than 6 years later, they divorced on January 19, 1983. The reasons were never shared publicly, but they kept a respectful tie for their daughter. Samantha grew up mostly with her mom, and later became a clinical psychologist and personal growth expert. Sally once said softly, "We didn't divorce because we hated each other, but because we were no longer a good match." Samantha has always been the beautiful link between us. After the divorce, Sally never married again, and didn't talk about any serious romances. She chose to live on her own, focusing on theater, voice acting, and charity work. There were some old rumors she briefly dated Elvis Presley before fame, but Sally laughed them off, saying it was just a fun time. "He was very polite, took me out to dinner, but we were just friends." Today, at 78, Sally lives quietly near her daughter Samantha and enjoys a free life. She rarely talks about her personal stuff, but once shared, "I don't need a new man for Samantha, and I don't need one for myself either. My life is already full with the stage, friends, and the kids I help through charity." Beyond acting, Sally puts a lot of energy into helping causes, especially poor kids around the world. She travels to far places and sees real, raw pain. Those trips leave her heartbroken and somehow healed. In her later years, Sally Struthers doesn't chase the spotlight like before, but her life story still has the weight of someone who has lived fully and deeply with feelings. The last public time Sally and Rob Reiner were together was in 2024, at the Emmy Awards honoring Norman Lear, the creator of All in the Family. Sally and Rob stood on the same stage, said a few polite words, and smiled nicely. But it was clear, the old closeness was gone. The air between them had a soft distance like 2 old friends who took totally different paths. Although their friendship has faded with time, Sally Struthers has always spoken of Rob Reiner with respect and warmth. She often says that Rob was the one who helped her grow as an actress. He always advised her to put the whole show's success over personal stuff. There were never any public fights or problems between them. Just time and life slowly turned that once close friendship into a nice memory. pp. In the end, the relationship between Sally and Rob never had a clear label. They weren't lovers, nor just quick coworkers. It was a connection made in their youth, on the set of All in the Family, grown through surprise phone calls, and then quietly ended as life made each choose different parts. Maybe there are ties not meant to last forever, but only to remind us how deeply we were once understood. If Rob hadn't been so worn out, if Sally had held on tighter, if time had been a bit nicer, would their story be different? Or is it the unfinished part, the not complete, that makes their connection so lingering? Between them, there was no goodbye, no anger, only a long quiet over many years, and an unspoken regret neither ever said out loud. Thank you for staying until the final lines of this story. If you were touched by unclear relationships, by feelings without names yet very real, like those between Sally and Rob, please leave a like or a comment to share how you feel. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue listening together to stories that are sad, beautiful, and profoundly human, where memories are not forgotten, but retold with complete sincerity. Press that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you never miss a video, and share this with others.